Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
It's been a year, and we've looked back on, in that brief slideshow, of all of the ways in which we never stopped being Congregation B'nai Shalom and being a community in whatever ways we could throughout that very long year. So this is a time in which we look back and we also look ahead. And when we look back, there's all kinds of emotions, losses, anxieties, but also moments of blessing, moments of joy and laughter. And so we want to lift up those blessings as we enter this new year. As you saw in one of those last pictures, our choir was rehearsing throughout the summer, and as we got a little closer and took into account what was going on around us and our desire to be as safe as we could these high holy days, we ended up recording them in our courtyard. And so for those who are joining us this morning on live stream and those who are in our sanctuary, we will get to hear our choir in just a moment, but it will be via the screen here, and we encourage you to be with them, to join in. We begin with the uplift of praise and psalm on page 135 in the prayer book, Psalm 150. And just a reminder for those who are on the live stream, we're so pleased you are with us. And if you didn't make arrangements to have a hard copy book in front of you, please, if you're looking for a way to participate and follow along, go back to the email with the live stream links, where we also included the link for the Kindle app prayer book and the web-based flip book, so that you can follow along on the same pages that we are calling out and join in from home. Psalm 150.
Hallelujah.
we prepare ourselves to pray. This morning, I'll invite you to turn to page 142, but before we come to the Baruch Hu, we will have a meditation to take us there, led by the choir, opened by Judith Silver. And really, this is a time for us to open ourselves to a reflective mode, open ourselves to possibility of renewal, open ourselves to speak truthfully as we look within. And so together we open.
Open my eyes to truth, open my hands to give freely, open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. Open my eyes to truth, open my hands to give freely, open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. Open my eyes to truth, open my hands to give freely, open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. Open my eyes to truth, open my hands to give freely, open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. Open, 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 open.
With me at the top of 145. Hello, sun in my face. Hello, you who make the morning and spread it over the fields and into the faces of the tulips and the nodding morning glories and into the windows of even the miserable and the crotchety. Best preacher that ever was, dear star that just happens to be where you are in the universe, to keep us from ever darkness, to ease us with warm touching, to hold us in the great hands of light. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Watch now how I start the day in happiness, in kindness. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMa'orot. And as we move our way towards the Shema, the Chatimah at the bottom of 148, Baruch atah Adonai, habocher ba'amo Yisrael be'ahava. Our praise to you, Adonai. You have singled out your people, Israel, with love. Continuing on page 150. You may be seated.
Page 152.
Rata et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanacha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha u'vlechtecha v'derech u'shochbecha u'kumecha u'shartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'einecha u'ktatam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kedoshim le'echem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiyot lachem le'Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem.
We continue in the middle of page 163. The voice that redeems us comes from within, said Rabbi Eliezer Hamodai. Consider the courage of Israel. When Moses said to the people in Egypt, "Arise and go forth," they did not ask, "How can we go into the wilderness with no sustenance for the way?" They had faith and went forward. The voice that lifts up the lowly upholds the exhausted and tells us to put one foot in front of the other. Sometimes it comes from within. We continue at the top of 164.
Norati
the top of 166. Prayer is a step on which we rise from the self we are to the self we wish to be. Prayer affirms the hope that no reality can crush, the aspiration that can never acknowledge defeat. We continue now with the central tefillah on the even-numbered pages that will take us through to page 170.
Yeshua, 'Cause I am 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 Yeshua, ' ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי
You may be seated. We continue now in the middle of 174. Tokef, this medieval pute that is one of the anthemic moments of these high holy days. Do we really need it this year? It comes in a typical year once in the calendar. For people who have gotten used to living every day the way we expected it to go, and it comes and reminds us that tomorrow is never certain. Things happen that are beyond our control because we were never really fully in control in the first place. And then towards the end, it reminds us that even though that is the nature of our existence, we still have choices to make each day. How we choose to live and treat others. But this last year and a half, we've been walking around, most of us, with this heightened awareness that we are not in control. We've walked around with heightened anxieties, with hard stares at the people in the supermarket who still weren't wearing their mask correctly after a year. With frustration. People who just didn't seem to be doing the right thing for the benefit of the larger whole. And then the truth comes along that even when we've tried to do absolutely everything the right way, the best we could, for ourselves and for our families, we still weren't in control. And things happened that we couldn't change. So I don't know if we really need to hear this medieval poem this year. We're going to read an alternative version of it and hear some of the traditional liturgies sung. I think we've learned that it's very difficult to live each and every day for an extended period of time with this kind of awareness that this poem is meant to bring to us just once a year. We're having to learn, we're continuing to have to learn how to adapt and continue to live as fully as we can in a time of greater uncertainty than most of us have been used to. But live we can, and help each other we can, and reach out to others we can. And that perhaps is the deeper message of this poem. I invite you to join me on page 179. On Rosh Hashanah, we plunge like swimmers into a sea of words. On Yom Kippur, the sea rises, then crests, and we emerge sealed by the wax, warmed by the fire of braided candle. The new year is like a trailhead opening wide before us, the day of fasting, narrow, breathless, so quick to close. We contemplate a new year, and this we know. Some of us will live, and some of us will die. Some will die young, and some very old. Some by water, some by fire. Some by sword, some by beast. Some by hunger, some by thirst. Some by plague, some by earthquake. Some by stoning, some by strangling. Some of us will feel at ease, some will be restless. Some will have peace of mind, some will have strife. Some will be tranquil, some will be tormented. Some will be raised high, some will be brought low. Some will have riches, some will be impoverished. Even so, the way we act, the way we speak, the way we meet God's image in ourselves and in others, these things have great power to make our lives matter. Therefore, let us make whole the broken shards, green and thick the withering grass. Let the wind fill us with urgency for life. Let dreams give birth to justice and goodness. God of holiness, God of hope, let us glimpse your truth as we attach our hope to yours.
Rosh Hashanah yechatenun yikatevun uvyom tzom kippur yechatenun
but through return to the right path, through prayer and righteous giving, we can transcend the harshness of the decree. We continue on page 184. I invite you to rise in body or spirit. You may be seated. And we take a couple of minutes now in quiet reflection time, an opportunity to continue with the traditional liturgy, if you would like, white pages, or to see what speaks to you as you look through the pages, perhaps find a passage, a poem in the alternative readings on the gray tinted pages. Sit and meditate with for a while. Continue now on page 214. Our God, divine presence whose path our ancestors walked, bless us now with words first bestowed on Israel in the time of Moses and Aaron, the threefold blessing given us through Torah that joins our hopes with theirs.
Adonai v'yishmecha.
Ken Yehi Ratzon.
Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chonaka.
Ken Yehi Ratzon.
Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.
Ken Yehi Ratzon. We continue on page 220. May the words of our mouths, the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, soul of eternity, our rock and our redeemer.
Yehu liratzon imrefi. Yehu liratzon imrefi. V'evion libi lefanecha. Adonai tzuri v'koli. Oh, may the words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart be acceptable before you, O God, my rock and my redeemer. Oseh shalom bimromav, v'yaseh shalom aleinu, v'hakol Yisrael v'yimeru, v'yimeru. Amen.
Of those anthem moments is where we are now in the flow of the service. In the final lines of Avinu Malkeinu, we ask God to save us through acts of justice and love. I'm always struck that so much of what is embedded in the language of our liturgy, the prayers that we inherited from those who came before us, call out to God for that which we wish to see in the world. And of course, it's holding up a mirror. Because if we want to see it, we have to be it. We have to be God's hands. And so when we ask that we be saved through acts of justice and love, it begins with us. I'm going to invite Carol Grayson to come up and open the locked doors as I invite all to rise. We're on page 223. We'll remain standing as we continue into our Torah service. I'm going to invite Aaron Fox to come up to carry our Torah scroll, and as he does so, first time we're doing a hakafah with quite this many people in the room. One of the traditions of the Torah moving around a space like this is that we don't turn our backs on the Torah. So I'm going to ask us, particularly this year, that we refrain from reaching out for all of us to touch the same surface, but instead just rotate your bodies, follow around as he walks around the room, and in doing so you will be equally honoring the Torah scroll.
In kamocha v'Elohim Adonai, in kenasecha malchutecha, malchut kol olamim, memshaltecha bechol dor v'ador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai himno le'olam va'ed, Adonai oz le'amo yitein, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Adonai, Adonai, rachum v'chanun, erech apayim v'rav chesed bemet, notzer chesed la'olamim, noser avon v'pesha, v'chata v'nakeh. Adonai, Adonai, erachum v'chanun, erech apayim v'rav chesed bemet, notzer chesed la'olamim, noser avon v'pesha, v'chata v'nakeh. Lecha Adonai hagedula, v'hagevura, v'hatiferet, v'hanetzach, v'hahod. Ki chol b'shamayim u'va'aretz, ki chol b'shamayim u'va'aretz. Lecha Adonai הממלכה והעמיד נעשה לכל ראש. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. כי kadosh Adonai Eloheinu hamemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu hamemu. Ramemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ramemu Adonai Eloheinu v'hishtachavu lehar kodsho. Al shlosha divarim, al shlosha divarim, al shlosha divarim, ha'olam omer. Al shlosha divarim, al shlosha divarim, al shlosha divarim, ha'olam omer.
You may be seated. the Akedah, the reading that we have traditionally read on first day. In some other congregations, it'll be the reading for second day, tomorrow. This year, I want to just take a moment to reflect on more of the allegorical themes of the story, because the original meaning of this text in some ways has been lost in the midst of time. There are those who, over the centuries, have believed it was truly a test of faith. There are those who see it as a polemic against child sacrifice, a story that unfolds to demonstrate that that is not what our God requires of us. And there are those in more contemporary periods who have looked at this tale of Abraham and Isaac and the command by God to sacrifice a son as being a sign that Abraham, in fact, failed the test. How could it be that he argued to save just a handful of potentially righteous people in the wicked city of Sodom and Gomorrah, but did not ask a single question when God asks him to prepare to sacrifice his son? But if we step aside from the narrative itself and we take a look at some of the symbolic moments, then, like all of our Torah texts, it can read as part of our internal spiritual landscape. And that's what we'll do today. We have no individual aliyot in this service this morning, but instead 3 group aliyot in which, as I set them up, I'll invite all of you in the room and all of you on live stream to choose if this aliyah calls to you. And there's no rationing. You may be called by 1, by 2, by 3, and that's okay. And if you feel called to an aliyah, we'll ask you, if you feel physically able to just rise where you are, to stand at home. And if physically standing is difficult, one can be called to rise spiritually and still join in. The actual blessings for the aliyot can be found on page 230. So as I ask Gordon to step up, he's going to be chanting Torah for us this morning. For our first aliyah, when God calls to Abraham, he replies, Hineni, here I am. So this is all about having a Hineni moment. It's a Hebrew word that indicates a very present awareness to what is needed and a willingness to respond. And I think this past year that many of us have had our own Hineni moments. We've said Hineni in the midst of a pandemic to do our part to try and keep our family and our community safe. We've said Hineni to recognizing our responsibility to better educate ourselves and step up to be part of the solution to racial inequality, not part of the problem. We've said Hineni to the urgency of global climate change. We've made changes in our own lives, or we've lobbied for a solution to help make a difference. If you have said Hineni this year, in these or any other ways, I invite you please to rise for this aliyah. And together we say, Baruch hu et Adonai Hamvorach, and all others respond.
Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher bacha banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayihi achar hadvarim ha'ele v'ha'Elohim nisa et Abraham vayomer elav Abraham vayomer hineni vayomer kach na et pincha et yechidcha asher ahavta et Yitzchak velech lecha ul eretz Hamoria v'alehu sham li'olah al achad ha'harim asher omar elecha v'yashkem Abraham baboker v'yechevosh et chomoro v'yikach et shnei nerav ito v'et Yitzchak beno v'yivaka atzeola v'yakam v'yelach El hamakom asher amar lo Elohim.
We rise again for the blessing after. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam natan b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Mishaberach avotenu v'imotenu. May the one who blessed all the ancestors who came before you bless you who have risen for this aliyah, to recognize that there are moments in all of our lives when we recognize the need to be so present to say Hineni. In those moments of Hineni, may you be strengthened, and may you continue to go from strength to strength so that you have the ability to be present for those in your lives, those in need, not just in this moment, but in many moments to come. And let us say, Amen.
Amen.
You may be seated. For our second aliyah, we think of the theme of sacrifice. Sacrifice takes many shapes and forms. This past year, some of us made sacrifices for the needs of our family. We might have left a job to support the needs of our children. We might have taken more precautions than many around us because of an immunocompromised member of the family. You might have given of your energy and time to advocate for and prioritize the mental or physical health needs of a child or another member of your family. Or perhaps you work in healthcare and you had to be so careful about what you brought back home. This aliyah is for those who have sacrificed for the sake of others. Please rise where you are, in the sanctuary and at home, for this second aliyah. And we join together. Baruch hu et Adonai hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Amvorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Bayom hashlishi vayisa Abraham et einav vayar et hamakom merachok vayomer Abraham el narav shuvu lachem poim hachamor v'ani v'hanar nelchad ko v'nishtachave v'nashuva alechem vayikach Abraham et atzei haolah vayasem vayitzak beno vayikach biado et ha'esh v'et hamachelet v'yelchu shnehem yachdav vayomer Yitzchak el Abraham aviv vayomer aviv vayomer hineni b'ni vayomer hinei ha'esh v'ha'etzim vayaseh leolah Vayomer Abraham Elohim Yireh Haseh Leolah b'ni v'elchu shnehem yachdav.
We rise again together for the blessing after, for the second Aliyah.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Mishaberach avotenu v'imotenu. May the one who bless all of our ancestors bless you who have risen for an aliyah to recognize sacrifices that have been made. May you be blessed that in that which you made space for, you were able to lift up, to help heal, to keep safe, to carry some of the weight that another needed in these difficult times. And like in our first Aliyah, may you continue to go from strength to strength and to feel the loving hands and arms of others who hold you up in your times of need and who express their gratitude for that which you have given. And let us say, Amen.
Amen.
You may be seated. So Abraham, his hand is stayed and he is redirected. The story takes another turn because an angel appears. Looking at the world around us, it feels like we are put to the test again and again. I don't believe in a God that causes these events in order to test us, but the test is there anyway. Sometimes we walk through life with blinders on, able to ignore the pressing needs that demand response. We don't see the angels who might be there directing our path. But perhaps not this year. This past year, we've all been tested in some way. How do we as individuals and as a society respond? For this Aliyah, I'd like to invite you to think of the angels who have helped you navigate the tests of the past year. It might have been personal, or it might have been those who have helped our communities and our country navigate these tests. If someone in particular comes to mind that you would like to acknowledge with a blessing, please rise for this Aliyah. And together we say, Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvorach,
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam va'ed. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayavo el hamakom asher amar lo Elohim vayiven sham Abraham et hamizbeach v'aroch et ha'etzim vayakod et Yitzchak beno vayasem oto al hamizbeach mima'al la'etzim vayishlach Abraham et yado vayikach et hamachelet lishchot et beno vayikra elav malach Adonai min hashamayim vayomer Abraham Abraham vayomer hineni vayomer al tishlach yadcha el hanar val taslo me'uma ki ata yadati kirei Elohim ata velo chasachta et bincha et yichidcha mimeni. Vayisa Abraham et einav vayar v'hinei ayil achar nechaz basfach bekarnav Vayelech Abraham v'yikach et ha'ayil v'ya'alehu lela tachet beno. Vayikra Abraham Shema makom ahu Adonai yireh asher yamer hayom b'Adonai yireh. Vayikra malach Adonai el Abraham shenit min hashamayim vayomer b'nishmetinu Adonai ki yan asher asita et hadavar hazeh v'lo chasakta et pincha et yichidecha ki barecha barechecha barba arbet zaracha kol kekavei hashamayim v'chachol asher asfat hayam v'hirash zaracha et sharevav v'yedvarchu v'zaracha kol gei haaretz ekev asher shemata bekoli v'yashav Abraham el nera v'yakumu v'yelchu yachdav el Beersheva v'yeshav Abraham b'Beersheva.
We rise again for the close of this third aliyah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam ata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Mishaberach avotenu v'imotenu. May the one who blessed all of our ancestors bless all of you who have stood up for this aliyah to acknowledge the angels in your life. May those angels always be present. May we have our eyes open to notice the ones who, with a kind word, some thoughtful advice, their presence just at that moment when you needed someone else to be present. May they continue to appear for us when we need them. And may we, in our own way, be angels in the lives of others. And let us say, Amen.
Amen.
And I want to say, Yasher Koach, Todah Rabbah. Thank you, Gordon. We offer a prayer for healing before we return the scroll to the ark. Blessings are on page 245, and we take this moment to hold in our hearts those who we are thinking of who are in need of healing of body, healing of spirit, both those whose names we know and so many whose names we do not, in so many places, both here and abroad. We take a moment to bring them to mind. A blessing for healing.
Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Avraham,
Now I'd like to invite Chuck Green to come up for Hagba and Leah Nasser for Galila. Please rise in body or spirit.
V'zot haTorah asher sam Moshe livnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Idu Avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Idu Avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Idu Avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Idu Avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, 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 Idu Avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, 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 Idu Avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Idu Avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Idu Avdei Adonai. It is a tree of life to them that hold fast to it. All of its supporters are happy. It is a tree of life to them that hold fast to it. All of its supporters are happy. Shalom, 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 shalom.
Please join me on page 272, Prayer for Our Country. God of holiness, we hear your message. Justice, justice you shall pursue. God of freedom, we hear your charge. Proclaim liberty throughout the land. Inspire us through your teachings and commandments to love and uphold our precious democracy. Let every citizen take responsibility for the rights and freedoms we cherish. Let each of us be an advocate for justice, an activist for liberty, a defender of dignity. And let us champion the values that make our nation a haven for the persecuted, a beacon of hope among the nations. May our actions reflect compassion for all people within our borders and abroad. May our leaders and officials embody the vision of our founders to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. We pray for courage and conscience as we aim to support our country's highest values and aspirations, the hard-won rights that define us as a people, the responsibilities that they entail. We pray for all who serve our country with selfless devotion, in peace and in war, from fields of battle to clinics and classrooms, from government to the grassroots, all those whose noble deeds and sacrifice benefit our nation and our world. We are grateful for the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness that our founders ascribed to you, our Creator. We pray for their wisdom and moral strength, that we may be guardians of these rights for ourselves and for the sake of all people, now and forever. We continue as we return the Torah to the Ark.
Darchenom v'chol Hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Chadesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem.
You may be seated. This year, for the first time, Rabbi Iderson and I have written our Rosh Hashanah morning sermon together. So we're both delivering the same sermon in our respective services. For me, this past year and all that we have experienced together is categorized in my mind as an enduring dilemma. Enduring dilemma is a term I learned while in rabbinical school and serves as a way to think about problems we face in our lives. However, unlike problems, enduring dilemmas are managed. They cannot be solved. This means that when an issue arises again, it does not happen because we have not sufficiently addressed it the first time, or because a leader has failed in any way. Rather, it is baked into the nature of the issue because it is an enduring dilemma. The pandemic is an enduring dilemma. My colleagues, Dr. Leslie Lippman and Michael Zeldin, suggest that this thinking is deeply consistent with Jewish thought and action, both ancient and contemporary. The rabbis nearly 2 millennia ago expressed this as Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chayim. Both this and that are the words of the living God. In more recent times, the idea is captured in a Hasidic maxim. We all should have 2 notes, one in each pocket. In one pocket, the whole world was created for me, and in the other pocket, I am nothing but the dust of the earth. Both texts underscore the importance of being able to hold 2 sometimes conflicting perspectives and values in tension. With the arrival of the Jewish New Year, I realized this year more than any other that I will never be the same person that I was pre-2020. I guess you don't go through something like a global pandemic without a few life lessons learned along the way. It's also true that it's probably worth pondering on what those life lessons might be, especially at this time of reflection and turning. Here's some of what I'm imagining many of us learned. We learned that our homes could be a place of respite. Whatever was going on outside, we strove to make our homes places we wanted to be. For those of us with young children at home, finding actual peace and quiet may have been less attainable. Even so, our dwellings became a place where we could find comfort, where we felt safe, and where we could find previously undiscovered simple joys and happiness. We learned that whether we like it or not, we are all in this together, masked and separated by 3 to 5 feet, and our success or failure depends on everyone doing their part. The words essential workers became the phrase of the year during lockdowns and COVID surges. I do hope we never forget how much we depend on grocery clerks, truck drivers, factory workers, public service employees, teachers, and one another. When one part of the system breaks down, we all suffer. It's important that we all work together for the greater good. We've learned that planning is good. Aspirations are great. but the capability to pivot when things do not work out is the key to it all. Plans are going to get ruined. Most of our goals are going to at least be delayed and more likely never realized, at least not in the ways we expected. If we are adaptable, flexible, we do have the ability to figure it out. And especially after this past year, we know we can. We figured a lot of stuff out in the last year, and we should be proud of this. We made it. And now we know we can make it through, even when things do not go our way. Finally, and this is probably the most critical lesson of all this past year, a constant stream of issues were thrown at those of us who are parents and grandparents. We didn't have time to prepare, and we did not have prior experience to draw on. We didn't know how to react. But one thing's for certain: the children were watching. How we, as parents and grandparents, handle adversity has a big impact on how our children will react when life throws them curveballs. This is the greatest lesson we can give them, and perhaps the greatest takeaway from this past year. COVID is just the beginning in a long line of obstacles our children will encounter. We are their greatest teacher in how to handle the challenges of life. And that includes, if we or our children were especially struggling, knowing when to reach out to others, to ask for support and help. This is a lesson I will surely never forget. We teach our children how to cope. There is no question that this has been one of the most disruptive moments in our lifetimes. The pandemic upended our lives, our school systems, our jobs, our families, our plans. When things were constantly shifting, we become acutely aware of how little control we have over what happens next. That is, as I said earlier, the message of the Unatana Tokef liturgical poem. Every year we are reminded of the truth that we are never truly in control and never know what might lie ahead. And psychologically, we can handle that message once a year. It invites humility. I am but dust and ashes, and can help us manage the unexpected bumps in our roads. But most of us are challenged to live in that space for an extended period of time. At the same time, disruptions also offer opportunities. When we're not full-time taxi drivers to children with over-programmed after-school activities, some of us rediscovered family time. Time spent around games or puzzle boards together, time spent learning how to bake challah or cookies or pies together. We discovered long bike rides or walks in the woods with a friend or two, or incredible podcasts that stimulated our minds. For some of us, this was time to take stock and ask ourselves, was I really living the life that I want? Rosh Hashanah and the High Holy Days have come around every year of our lives, but this past year might have been the year that so many more of us actually looked at the trajectory of our lives, evaluated what is working and what is not. And this kind of introspection did not just take place at an individual level. There are debates in our wider society, our nation, as we ask important questions about whether we've been on a path that allows us all to thrive and reach our potential. As an illustration of the many kinds of transformative change being inspired, or at least dreamed of in this moment, take the research from the Pardee Center for the Study of the Longer Range Future at Boston University. They undertook 103 interviews with experts on all kinds of societal issues and trends and asked each to reflect on how the aspect of civilization that they studied might change in response to the experience of the pandemic. Take, for example, Dr. Julia Kim in Bhutan, reflecting on the future of happiness. She notes how we have better understood how government policies can shape our health and well-being. Many were experiencing an epidemic of loneliness and social isolation even before COVID, she notes. We're more aware of the superficial ways that we might understand happiness, and we're starting to see how true contentment and flourishing need to be addressed not only at the individual level, but as part of the well-being of our whole society. Many of those interviewed reflected on issues we might address through a Jewish ethical lens as a matter of social justice. They note how our experiences during the pandemic have made us more conscious of how structural inequality impacts not only those who have the least social or economic power, but how these inequalities diminish the overall welfare of us all. They call on us to look at ways we can create communities in which we can all thrive. Take, for example, Dr. Judith Butler in Berkeley, reflecting on the future of gender and identity. She notes how women, non-gender conforming youth, basically any mobile population, which includes refugees, are more vulnerable now because shelter in place has been a disaster for so many transient persons. These groups and the issues associated with them have now been brought into full view, much more so than ever before. And while social movements usually form out of injustice, rage, and protest, many people are coming together to advance the message that in a moral sense, something is wrong. Dr. Butler finds hope for the future from people banding together on the basis of common beliefs and ideals rather than from anger and rage. And finally, take for example Dr. Marsha McNutt, president of the National Academy of Sciences, who believes that the future of science and scientific study has forever changed. Science will be much more inclusive. Scientists tend to work mainly with those they know personally, studied with, or worked with in a lab setting. Now, using technology, the world has opened, and scientists at MIT can now speak instantly with others around the world and build trusting relationships that will further their work. The pandemic has changed how we conduct research, how we improve treatments and trials, and how we use our resources to influence a better future for humankind. Now, what if we thought about the future of Jewish community in these ways? To be sure, Judaism has an incredible spiritual toolbox that provides ways for us to prioritize a deeper kind of well-being over the superficial, fleeting experiences that we sometimes confuse as the source of happiness. And the Religious Action Center of the Reform Movement is continuing to build capacity to help individuals and congregations apply Jewish ethics and values to the ways that we make our voices heard as citizens campaigning on issues that we care about. How might we make these compelling aspects of Jewish values more central to how we all live our Judaism? What about Jewish congregational life? We spent a year and a half letting go of old assumptions and experimenting with new approaches. What do we most want our children to learn in Jewish education? Not only the stories and the rituals of our heritage, but spiritual tools to help them thrive in life. Why do we come together in prayer? Not only to connect to the words and rituals of our ancestors, but to better see the face of God in each other, to create space in our lives for contemplation, and to reach out to that which is greater than the self, to give us the strength and resilience to travel through life's challenges. When we live as such a small minority in our wider communities, how do we create an intensely Jewish cultural experience in this central place of gathering that anchors us in our identity? Just as the Pardee Center asked those future-oriented questions of over 100 experts, so we want to ask those questions at Congregation B'nai Shalom. We do not know how the coming year will unfold, but we are launching Project Envision to begin to imagine and to wish for an even better Jewish future together. The long-term goal of Project Envision is to create a unifying and inspiring strategic vision for the future of Judaism in central Massachusetts and move forward with steps to sustain and grow our congregation over the next 10 to 20 years. Just a small goal. We are choosing, inspired by some of the best thought leaders of today, to take this moment of uncertainty and disruption as an opportunity to look at the trajectory of Jewish community life and ask ourselves, how can we evolve to meet the social and cultural changes that we are witnessing? While there are researchers and thought leaders that we can draw wisdom from as we begin our envisioning work, when it comes to meeting the needs of the Jewish community, we also want to hear from you. In the Talmud, when a matter of Jewish practice was not clear and more than one possible answer existed, you might find a rabbinic scholar saying, Pok chazi mai amah davar. Go out and see what the people are doing. It didn't mean that anything goes, but it indicated that Jewish tradition understands the importance of the people to shape the path that Jewish life will take. In the weeks following these High Holy Days, you'll begin by receiving a survey from Project Envision, a first step to helping to guide a process that will shape the future of our congregation. Project Envision will be led by expert facilitators Mark Siebel, Jeff, and Barbara Gavendo, who have decades of experience in business and nonprofit creative process and innovation consulting. They've assembled a core team to begin the work, and over the next 2 years, we hope that we'll glean inspiration from many of you along the way. What might the Jewish congregation of the future look like? We don't yet know. We'll continue to be a congregation that responds to the changes that we witness, to the needs of our members, to the world around us. We'll continue to experiment, just as we did this past year and a half, and we have at these High Holy Days. But let's think big about our potential for the future. In the words of Herzl, who dreamed of a Jewish home, Im tirtzu ein zo agada. If we wish for it, it is no dream. Let's envision our future together. Shana Tova. Well, we've arrived at the shofar service. If you wish to turn back to page 206, actually 204. Let's read responsively. Return to God by pursuing justice and right. Look to your souls, improve your ways and your deeds. Let each of you abandon your evil ways, forsake your unworthy schemes. Arise and see the glory of all being. Open yourselves to the light of God.
Awake, awake, O Zion. Clothe yourself in splendor. Put on your robes of majesty.
Listen well. In silence and stillness is the voice of God.
There was a great and mighty wind, splitting mountains and shattering rocks. But the Eternal was not in the wind. After the wind, an earthquake. But the Eternal was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, fire. But the Eternal was not in the fire. After the fire, a soft murmuring sound.
Through worthy deeds, bring near the day of unity and goodness, a glimpse of perfection.
Adonai shall reign over all the earth. On that day, God shall be one, and God's name shall be one. Listen, Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one.
The blessings for hearing the sounding of the shofar are on 206. We are blessed with 2 shofar blowers from our team this morning, and they're going to be positioned at these 2 doors. Gordon over there, and Chuck is going to be moving over here. As you saw from our choir videos, we have pivoted, we have adapted as we have needed to, and just as we determined that the additional output of singing was something that we wanted to keep on screen for this year in our sanctuary. So the significant output of the shofar is going to be aimed towards the open air doors, but we all have the blessing of still being able to hear the sound of the shofar played live this morning. So I invite you to rise as Lisa leads us in the blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lishmoa kol shofar. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
תקיעה, שברים תרועה, תקיעה, תקיעה, שברים, תקיעה, תקיעה, תרועה, תקיעה, תקיעה, שברים תרועה, תקיעה, תקיעה, שברים, תקיעה, תקיעה, תרועה, תקיעה, תקיעה, שברים תרועה, תקיעה, תקיעה, שברים, תקיעה, תקיעה, תרועה, תקיעה גדולה.
Yeshua.
Arashet sifatenu yeram lefonach, eram v'ni
standing as we move to the Aleinu on page 286. Be seated. We come to words of Mourner's Kaddish, found on page 292. It's hard to take in the sheer scale, the number of people who have died specifically just from COVID this past year. Beloved members of this congregation, whose seats in our sanctuary and social hall around our Torah study table are now empty. Many of you who have parents and other relatives who have died, friends, co-workers. Throughout this whole time, this community has really been present for those who have shared with us their losses, creating minyanim, sometimes in person, many times online. People showing up for friends from other countries and continents to be part of a Zoom Shiva. We may have missed the presence of many hugs, but our rituals provide for an opportunity to be seen, to be held. If you are remembering somebody this morning who has died during this past month, and you're still in this period of Shloshim, we invite you to rise at this time. Or if rising is difficult, just to raise a hand so we can acknowledge your presence. And if you're remembering somebody who's died during the past year, likewise. And if you have a yard site and you are remembering somebody who's died at this time in years past, please rise. And I invite all of us to now rise in body or spirit and to join those as together we say, Yit Gadal v'Yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah v'Alma Divra Chirutei v'Amlich Malchutei v'Chaye Echon v'Yom Echon v'Chaye Dechol Beit Yisrael v'Agala v'Zman Kariv v'Yimru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Leolam U'Lamei Almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ah v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithada v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei dekudusha brechu le'ela u'le'ela mikol berchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechemata daliram v'alma v'yimru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru. Amen. Please be seated. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'yimaru, Amen. For our close of service this morning, just a couple of announcements. One that was just given to me for any of you who are picking up a child who was in the children's program this morning. You will find them in the courtyard, not upstairs. Immediately following, we encourage you to head over to Lake Chauncey Beach on Lyman Street, just the other side of Route 9. For a short tashlich service and ritual. And you don't need to bring anything but yourself. Bird seed for scattering will be provided. And it's a beautiful day to go and stand on the beach. That's scheduled to start at approximately 10:45, but we'll certainly wait a few minutes for people in the building to have a chance to get over there. We also have Shana Tova greetings from Wafdi. Wafdi will not be outside the doors as they have been in past years to hand out brown paper bags for you to bring back with goodies. But we still want you to please bring food donations for the food pantry on Yom Kippur morning, or alternatively, if you're not going to be coming to the building on Yom Kippur morning, on the opening day of religious school, for those of you who are dropping off that morning, you'll be able to hand off bags of groceries from your car that our madrachim will bring in. And so those are two opportunities. And if neither of those opportunities work for you, we will be sending out an email with the address for you to mail a monetary donation to the Westboro Food Pantry. And in addition, every year that we've done this, we've also invited donations to Rachel's Table Children's Milk Fund. So we'll be providing you that information in an email and hope that our community, even though we're not all coming to the building on Yom Kippur, can respond as generously, if not more so, than we have in previous years. Second day Rosh Hashanah services tomorrow will be in here at 10 o'clock. And on Friday evening, it is Shabbat Shuvah. It's also the day before the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And that will be a topic of focus and reflection on that Friday evening service, whether you're joining us here in the sanctuary or on the live stream. We could not do any of what we are doing without our incredible tech team, which has expanded beyond just Stephen, with others in our sound room and down in the social hall. So just enormous gratitude to all of them. To our accompanist, Jim, again, thank you for being with us this year and adding to the music. To our choir, those who are here in the room and those who are joining us via live stream, thank you for the time you took to create beautiful music for us this year. Thank you, Lisa, for all of your hard work to make that happen. And we are going to hear them once again with something that became a bit of an anthem last year. With that, I'll invite our sound crew to run tape.
We return, we return, we return, we return, we return, return again. We return, we return,
wish everyone Shana Tova, may it be a good year and a healthy year. As you exit the sanctuary, I'd be very grateful if you could hand back the prayer books to the table outside. I want to express gratitude to our greeters and ushers, members of our congregation who volunteered to help with those tasks this year. And unless you're picking up a child, I encourage you to exit through the doors immediately outside the sanctuary to the outside, where you can then greet each other in the fresh air on this beautiful, beautiful day. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.